Chapter 21. The Shallow Sea. Above the surface, the sea appeared normal. It was vast and blue, and it rippled with waves. But below the surface, the sea was very unusual. It was hardly deeper than the deep end of a swimming pool, and gently shimmering dust was flowing along the currents. And walking on the bottom of that shallow sea was a robot. Clouds of poison tide swirled around Roz while she moved. With such poor visibility, the robot had to feel with her feet, one cautious step at a time. Occasionally, the clouds receded, and she could briefly see the surface just overhead. And then the poison tide came rushing back, and she was surrounded by dust once again. Brightbill had described the poison tide as winding through the ocean, like a river. And as the hours passed, Roz came to a bend in the poison tide's path. The dust clouds faded, and half a day after setting out from the island, she finally entered clear water. Now, the water may have been clear, but it wasn't healthy. At some point, the poison tide had come that way, and the seabed was still coated with dust. There were no schools of fish or colonies of crabs or fronds of seaweed. There was no life at all. Roz kept expecting the seabed to slope downward into the deep, but the shallow sea stretched on and on. She had always wondered how such a variety of animals came to live on her remote island, and now she wondered if that seabed had once been above water, connecting the island to other lands, like a bridge. She recalled Crag the turtle telling stories of how their island had once been a mountain until the ocean flooded the nearby flatlands. Crag's story sounded like a folk tale at the time, but now it seemed entirely possible. The robot was so busy pondering these ideas that she was slow to notice the changes happening around her. As she marched, the ground became sandier. Clumps of seagrass began to appear, and more grass appeared, and the clumps blended together to form a meadow that whirled with the motion of the water, and there were sea sponges and corals. Crabs and snails crawled out from under stones, and the fish, so many fish. There were small skinny fish and wide round fish. There were dull gray fish and fish that glittered with rainbow colors. Schools of fish swept over the sea meadow like birds over a field. And then there were the sounds. Whoop, 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 loop. Tap, 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 tap. The sea was abuzz with the soft sounds of animals. This place was filled with life. After witnessing so much devastation, it was a relief to see a healthy, bustling patch of water. Chapter 22. The Hope. Something big was bobbing along the choppy surface of the sea. It looked like a chunk of driftwood, but as Roz marched closer, she saw that it was a sea creature, slowly swimming against the current. The creature had a small head and long flippers and a large, streamlined shell. "Hello, sea turtle," said the robot. "My name is Roz." "You should turn around," said the sea turtle. "The poison tide is near." "I appreciate the warning, but I am not an animal. I am a robot. The poison tide does not affect me." The sea turtle rolled his eyes and snapped, "Well, aren't you lucky? The rest of us are fighting for our lives, and you're just going out for a pleasant stroll." "Actually, I am going to stop the poison tide." "And how do you plan on doing that?" "I am heading north in search of the ancient shark. I have heard that she is wise and powerful, and she will know what to do. Together, we will find a way." "Well, with the ancient shark's help, you might have a shot," said the sea turtle, and his hard expression softened. "I'm sorry I snapped at you, Roz. These are tough times. Yesterday I visited a beach where hundreds of sea turtles had laid thousands of eggs in the sand. And then the poison tide washed ashore. The grown turtles escaped, but none of the eggs survived." Roz's glowing eyes dimmed, and she said, "I am deeply sorry for your loss. I will do everything in my power to stop the poison tide." "So there's hope?" said the sea turtle. "There is hope," said the robot. "Thank you, Roz. I'm going to tell the other sea turtles about you. We all need a little hope right now." And with that, the robot and the turtle parted ways and continued through that shallow sea in opposite directions. Chapter 23, The First Night. The water was shallow enough that Roz could watch the sun moving across the sky. While she marched along the bottom, the bright ball of light wiggled and wobbled through the wavy surface overhead and sank toward the western horizon. The water turned orange and then purple and then black. Roz's first night in the ocean had begun. The robot activated her headlights, click, and light beamed out of her eyes. To one side, fish darted away, and to the other side, the seabed dropped sharply into the deep ocean. And that's when Roz noticed the migration. At the very edge of her vision, where her light beams faded into darkness, there was movement. Up from the deep came hundreds, thousands, millions of sea creatures. Most were microscopic, the tiniest life forms imaginable, but others were bigger, like fish and squid and bizarre jelly creatures. Each night they ascended to the starlight. Then, before the sun returned, they descended back into the deep. Around the world, countless sea creatures made this great vertical migration every night. Their movements churned the water, spreading nutrients throughout the depths, helping to keep the oceans healthy. And now our robot got to witness a small part of this natural wonder for herself. At that time of year, the nights were short, and a few brief hours after the sun had set in the west, it was already rising in the east. The migratory sea creatures disappeared back down into the abyss. The water turned purple and then orange and then bright blue, and Roz's first night in the ocean had ended. Chapter 24, The Boat. Sunlight spread down through the water and illuminated the robot. She was marching across a wide sandy plain dotted with boulders and seagrass. The ocean was a little deeper there, and floating above her was a glittering school of fish. The fish were twisting and turning together as if they shared the same mind. Roz had seen flocks of birds flying through the sky in a similar manner. And then, as now, she couldn't stop watching the undulating group of animals. The robot called out, "Hello, fish. My name is Roz. I am headed north in search of the ancient shark. Have you heard of her?" But the moment was interrupted by a distant buzzing noise. A boat was approaching. Roz hid against some rocks and waited for the boat to pass. The engine noise grew louder and louder, and then the boat appeared. It plowed across the surface, its underside dark against the bright sky, and at the back end its propellers fizzed through the water and left a trail of frothy waters in its wake. There was activity to the rear of the boat, and then a huge fishing net slowly lowered into the ocean. Roz tried to warn the fish. "Swim away," she cried. "A fishing boat is coming." But the engine noise drowned out her voice. The net swept through the school, scooping up fish as it went. Their shiny bodies thrashed as they tried to break free, but the net was too strong. And when the net was full, it was reeled in, and the fish were hauled above the surface and out of sight. In a matter of minutes, the vast, glittering school had been reduced to just a few survivors, who quickly flitted away. Chapter 25, The Song. Somewhere in the ocean, a whale was singing a sad song. It began with a high-pitched note. The note hung there for a while and then descended, sliding down to a low rumble before swinging up a little higher and fading to silence. The song was repeated, but this time it came from a different direction and a different voice. And then it was repeated again from somewhere else. And throughout that great big ocean, whales were singing the same song over and over. Roz scanned the area for whales, but she saw none. Sound can travel incredibly fast and far in water. The whales could have been anywhere. So the robot kept marching as the whales kept singing. And their sad song went like this. Whales are at home all across all the seas, from warm waves of foam to where whole oceans freeze. But a danger emerges and it fills us with dread. Southward it surges, leaving behind only dead. Whales, we can't stay. Through the blue we must ride. There's no other way to survive the poison tide.